28 is next, and we're putting our first clear part in. And I'm just showing you because it has the sprue gate on the side, so we have to nip that off and make that flat. It's at a funny angle, it sort of goes in at an angle into the fuselage by the looks of it. So I'm just going to nip that off, and then we can put that into the fuselage before we try and fit it into that. There we go, that's in. That fits in nicely. Right, step 29 is fitting this side of the fuselage, and they've got all these little references to say how it should be aligned, make sure it's fitting correctly. But what they don't tell you is that there's a certain knack to actually getting the thing on. And I had a little bit of a battle with it for a few minutes while I was working it out. But basically, that has to be underneath there, this has to be underneath the front, and that has to slot down. And you don't have, as you can see there, much space to wiggle. So I'm going to show you how to do it now. There's a bit of a trick to it. Okay, how to put the fuselage side on. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that piece underneath the front first. This gap here is going over there, and this slot is going to go over there. But we're going to start by putting it in nose first, then aligning the gap and the slot. Then we're going to tip it in so we can tuck the back underneath. Then we're going to right it up, making sure that the front doesn't come out. And as you do that, you then bring your slot closer to the point where it has to sit. Now you've got this line here which gets in the way, and that's the bit that's making it a bit tricky. But basically you push it right in, so you can see it's like that. And you can see there we've got it underneath, and then you want to just align the slot and once you've got the slot aligned, you can push it down and correct how it's sitting. It works okay, but it took a few goes to get my head around how it works. So there you go, that's how you do it. The instructions are asking you to check that this isn't away from here, that this part here is totally underneath this lip here. It's also asking you to check that this is buttered right up to that point there and is flat and level, which you'll have to pinch in a bit as you glue it. And it's also asking you to make sure that that is aligned with the edge of that. So if you've got all of those in, and in addition you've got your floor clipped into the location point at the front and at the back here, then you know you're not going to have any fit issues with the other half. Well, certainly not from you not fitting it correctly anyway. That fits in quite nicely, it holds together quite nicely, so we're going to glue that in now. a little bit of blacked out masking tape behind the orange is to help make that not look quite so clear and be similar to the other lights. Okay, step 38 was putting the roof section on, which I've just done, and as long as you have fitted the roof frame properly, you shouldn't have any fit issues with that. I had a small one, but it was of my own creation, and I've had to do a little bit of surgery to make it fit. My front piece was slightly bobbing up, so it didn't fit, so I've had to just trim a little bit to get it down, but it was a minor job. So the next thing is the fit of this piece, which we've just done, but I'll show you how that works. So there's a little tab here that goes into there like so, and then fit is sublime. So we are going to have a little bit of filling to do, minor stuff. It's just where the join is, making sure that there's no gaps there. So we're going to start this front end and glue this front lap in, so we need to hold it down, and I also want to just close this bit of fuselage in around it. So I'm going to just mess and get this straight first and be happy that it's all lined up properly. Right, that looks okay. So I'm going to glue this side in first, and the connection point at the top there, and bring that down that side like so, and then we want to make sure that we're pinching this closed, which we now are. So just hold that for a second, make sure that that's all done what we wanted to do. Okay. Hold that in place while it glues. Okay, so that's done. I think we're happy with all of that. And then we'll just glue it in at this back end as well. I'm definitely getting another one of these. I want to do the different window, so I'm definitely getting another one. We'll have a small gap there, tiniest of gaps. That's all gone together lovely. Okay, so that completes step 39. And that takes us over to tail assembly now in the next two steps. So let's get those parts out. With the removal of this last piece, this tail piece here from sprue A, that's us done with sprue A, so that's our first sprue that is complete. We've got tantalisingly a section of roof here without a gun turret, so yeah, but we don't need that, so that's all for the recycling. fit is absolutely great all the way through this build so far. Okay, that is our landing gear bays built. So the next step is clean up of the wings. So they are on sprue B. And they do look lovely, these wings. So B1, which is this one here. Okay, that's our two wings done. What I'm going to do now is painting the black on this lamp. So for speed, I'm using Vallejo, just because it's nice and easy with my drying times. There we go, we don't need much. This one is nearly empty, 79.50. So I'm just going to paint that in. I'm not going to worry about thinning it. I should be able to use this straight from the bottle, even though it's the Model Air range. It's a bit thick ordinarily, but it'll be fine for what we're doing here. And you'll notice I'm not bothering to prime either. This dries with a nice, almost satin finish, which is sort of what I'm looking for. When you look at these things, they almost have a powder coated look to them. These little legs on the front of the lenses, they sort of look powder coated, and as such have a sort of sheen to them that's really quite noticeable. So I want to try and capture that. Okay, that's already starting to dry, so that's perfect. We'll let that crack on. While that's drying, I'm going to clean my brush and then we'll put this other wing onto the fuselage. Right then, wing on the fuselage time, and what we've got is this spar and this little spar which has a couple of dimples on, and then this tab which are and this tab which are all connecting to this. So we've got 4 little location points on this. So what's important is that those dimples line up, and then everything else should come together. So there we go. So our wing spar sits really comfortably in there. We can put a little clamp on that and clamp them together, and then we know everything else is lined up really nicely then. I think we may have a couple of hairline gaps maybe, but let's see. So I'm going to start with some glue in this wing spar area, because I know that's sat correctly. Can't be sat incorrectly because it's tightly between the lines that have been laid out for it. And then I'm going to put some glue behind them tabs. And then finally we'll put some glue in between where we've got these two pips, and clamping them together means that we know that they've joined properly and that they're not out of line, because you can't see. There we go. That's our wing on. Cleverly, they've engineered it so that the joins follow panel lines. So actually you've just got this little area here and this little area here which aren't panel lines. So they're the only two areas you'll have to clean up. So that's really well thought through. That looks good. Right, while that's drying, we can start cleaning up the upper surfaces of the wings, and I think, yeah, that's now dried enough for us to do our chrome. So let's do that next, then we can get that wing on. So for the chrome, I'm going to use Vallejo Metal Colour Chrome 77707. It's a really nice paint, this actually. Okay, let's find myself a brush for that job. Now it doesn't look great when you when it comes out of the bottle, but I can assure you, when it dries, it's absolutely stunning. I don't know what magic they've put in here, but it is really nice when it dries. So there we go, just going to float some into the recesses. Like so. See why this is easy to do without attaching it to the fuselage. It's tempting to just do it when you're building everything else. There we go, that is our lamps painted in. Okay, I've removed my two upper wings and about to clean them up, and we have two little recessed holes there, and in the instructions it's asking you to drill out that with a 1mm drill bit. Now it is only showing it on one wing, and that is exactly right, so don't do it on both. I wasn't 100% sure, though it clearly doesn't show doing it on there, but you do have the recesses in both So don't accidentally drill out the second one. I did flick ahead in the instructions just to check what was going to be going in there, and it's this part here, D23, and as you can see it's only on one, so definitely only need to do that one. So I'm just dry fitting the wing upper surfaces, and we're definitely going to need to do a little bit of clamping together with the pegs when we do this, but it goes together really nicely. Any gaps is probably from me sanding away where the nubs were, to be fair. Yeah, looks good. The only thing is we have some painting to do on the inside here to make sure that it's all the interior green colour. So what I want to do is just look at building up some sub-assemblies before I go much further. I could brush paint that in and do that quickly, but probably want to look at least the rest of the engine cowling and see what needs to be done with that. And I think engines is the next step in the instructions. Yeah, it is. Now the engines themselves look quite detailed, so quite a bit of painting to be done there. So I think it's a case of looking at the engine cowlings and not actually fitting the wings together until we're ready to paint all the interior green components. So yeah, but these go together really nicely. Right, time to put the wings on and also the engine nacelles. I don't, are they called engine nacelles? Because actually the engines are in front of them. Anyway, these bits. I've hand painted in the green just for speed. It's, you know, I've got tiny little areas to paint. It's quicker to hand paint it than to set my airbrush up, paint it, clean the airbrush. So we're now ready to fit the wings, and they just plop into place. It's lovely. I've managed to get paint on there somehow. Don't know how that's happened. Okay. So we're going to plop it into place, and I'm going to glue it in along this edge first, and then we'll put the other wing on. And whilst we're holding the front part of the wing, we can put glue in here. Now we do have a bit of a gap here. I don't know whether that's because of my sanding or what, but the wing sort of fits into that area there. So see, if I push it down, then we are right. Okay. Put some glue in that section there. I'll just make sure that's nice and square. Okay, and then this trailing edge here. Right, and then we can put glue along this trailing edge. That all seems good. And coming back to the front, we can put some in the joint at the front edge there. Just hold that together for a sec. Then we can start working our way up the wing. Really just fit together nicely. And then our final job is to just glue this section here. Right, I'll come back to you when both wings are on. Okay, this is part C33. And what you have to do to fit this part, the fit is really tight. When you put it in, you get this big lip here where it doesn't fit. But actually it does. What you've got to do is squeeze everything out of it until you've got it into place, and then hold it and glue it. Okay, our engine parts are all cleaned up and de-seamed and ready to go. The pistons here have been glued together. They fit together really well. There's no need to remove the pins or anything. It all goes together well. I've test fitted everything and it all goes together like a dream. No issues that I can see at this stage. So we're ready to get these parts painted up. Having looked at some reference photographs of the engine, the instruction colours appear to be correct. So these aren't aluminium. So don't worry about the fact that you actually can't see the detail on there very well. It's probably the worst part in the kit. All these little cooling fins are quite mildly and softly moulded. Yeah, if there's a low light in the kit, then you're looking at it. But yeah, but this is all black, so it's not going to show up much anyway, and most of it's going to be hidden once it's on the model. So I'm not worried about it in this instance. So most of this is aluminium or semi-gloss black, satin black. So let's get on, get the parts painted up, and then we'll assemble them. I'm going to start with a black primer. Okay, just test fitting all the engine components now that parts are painted. And one thing that is standing out is this exhaust ring here, or I think it's an exhaust ring. And there is location pins on some, but not all of these little connection points here. And possibly because it's been painted, possibly it's just how it's moulded, but some of the connection pins don't go all the way down into their mating hole. So it's probably worth a good bit of checking this out before you start building things up. It's easier to test fit this now without the other components built up in front of it, and just make sure things fit. And if they don't, just remove the pin. I mean, this is, anyone who's been building models for many years know that location pins often are more of a hindrance than a help. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that pin off at that point there, so that it clicks all the way down. If you remove all the pins, it will mean aligning it will be more difficult, but in fairness, most of the other pins I don't appear to have an issue with, or at least not a major issue with. So what I can do is just shorten the pins so I have a little nub. So I'm going to go and try and do that. So I've shortened all the pins now except for one, which is going to be used as the locating pin, this one here. So let's have a go. Okay, so my fit is much better for shortening the pins. You can see I've left just a little location nub just on the end there. That means the fit's going to be a lot better. It does mean we have to sort of glue one in at a time and get it organised and just clamp it together, but we'll use a little bit of medium CA and that'll make that a nice quick job. So that's my tip on the engine. Everything else on the engine goes together lovely. I have checked out the paint call outs given by the instructions, and they do seem to be correct for a Mark 1. So there's a lot of black on here. So let's build up the engine. I think the next thing to say is that the build sequence of these parts laid out in the instructions is perfectly fine, but I'm not going to quite do it that way. I'm personally going to find it easier to add this part onto here before attaching it onto the main assembly, and the same with this part which fits in the back here. Because the fit of these parts is quite tight and quite fiddly, it's just going to be easier to attach those before you attach these pieces to the main assembly. Otherwise, you know, you can follow the instructions and it's not a problem. I just personally think it's going to be easier to attach the small parts first. the engine's built, our next challenge is the cowlings, and the cowlings are built up out of quite a few parts. We've got little sections of cowling with these blisters that need to go on the top, so in total 3. Two smaller ones and one larger one, the larger one being the top one. Now that's the important one because that's the one that's going to end up being partly camouflaged if we look at our paint instructions. So here's our paint instructions. We can see that from the top looking down it needs to look fully camouflaged, but when we look at it side on we've got wavy lines. That will be fun, and it shows you on the other side as well. So yeah, so as a consequence, my plan of action is to probably paint these separately, which means that we can avoid masking the engine off. So we'll paint these components separately and then build them up, which I think will be easier, but that top one is going to be quite complicated. However, when we look at it, we can see the join there, so that means that's the smaller one with 2 blisters. So we're only dealing with the top one that needs to be in anything other than white. And in fact, as we look at it, you can see there's a difference between a white and a slight grey. Well, in fact, they're both the same colour, they're both white, but the grey area is a gloss finish and the white area is a matte finish. So we'll be able to paint all of these at the same time. We'll paint them all white, and then when we come to do our camouflage, we'll sort that. In fact, I'm probably going to do the camouflage first and then paint the white on separately, because I think it's going to be easier to mask the camouflage than mask the white. Anyway, enough of that. We're not dealing with paint right now. We're dealing with the engine covers. Now, when I first did the review of this, first impressions, we did a live first impressions of this, so you can go back and see that if you wish. But one of my comments was that the sprue gates on here were right on the little lip here, which was going to make it difficult to clean up, and that it would have been better to have been on this flat surface here. Now, I still agree with that comment, but when you look at it close up, and you perhaps can't even see it on camera, I'll see if I can get it any closer, but there is actually a little chamfer on it, so it would still need cleaning up anyway. So possibly there was no benefit to doing it that way, because they have put the sprue gates on the cleanup edge on other parts, so it's not that they just didn't do it. They clearly decided there was no advantage to doing it. Anyway, there we go. We've got quite a few parts to clean up, so 7 per cowl, so 14 of these to clean up. Actually, they clean up quite well. Right, I'll crack on and do the others. And I have to admit, this is going to be a little bit tricky on camera, but we will give it a go. And what we have to do is line up our edge of the tape against the edge of where we want the masking to stop. Okay, so actually that was pretty good for a first attempt on camera. Then what we do, once we've got it on, is we take our rounded off cocktail stick point and we're just pressing it down and getting it right up into that groove, right into the edge where we're going to want to cut it. So once we've done that, we can go in with our sharp blade and just trim away what we don't need. So we're not really pressing because we don't want to damage anything. We're just running it along the edge and scoring it until we can feel, you can sort of feel that the blade has gone through. There we go. And we should be able to then just lift those away. And we've got a nice masked area. It's always worth checking that it's all nicely done. And in this instance, I'm happy that that is all good. Okay. Make sure we've got nothing there causing me a problem. Where you're most likely to have a problem is in the corners because you're taking the blade off and then putting it back on. So hopefully, if we've done a good job, we should be able to lift this tape off now and leave a mask behind, like so. Simple as that. Right, we are at step 86. We've just masked off or made masks for the glazing and all the glazing's in, and I've got to say the fit is stunning. That's just held in without any glue, that. So yes, fit is really good. So we've got a couple of decals to put on inside the doorway, regardless of which option you're doing. Now, it's telling you to paint the inside of the door 78, but the reality is the inside of all of this would be 78. So my intention will be to just give these a quick paint on the top surfaces in 78 rather than painting the inside, because that means having to mask the inside. So what we will do is we'll paint all of these in 78 before we fit them, and so we're not getting overspray onto this area because we're just building up more layers that we don't really want. So I'm going to put the decals on next, and then we will carry on with these top windows. So mask, and they'll be able to be then also painted before fitting, and the same with this. This will all want painting before fitting, but this one will be a little bit more problematic because of the shape, so we might have to do a bit of masking on that. We also need to fit that first as well, so we're working on this area, which is then getting us almost to the last page of this build. We've got couple of bits to go on the engine. Nacelles there, these, they look like radiators to me. Then we've got the undercarriage to do and some other small fittings. Now, interestingly, if you are not building paint scheme A, you don't have the windshield wipers. So actually, at this point now, before you fit the canopy, you want to be thinking about filling those holes and filing off this cable here, which is actually the cable feeding the wiper system with fluid. So that probably wants to be done before it's fitted, just to make it easier to handle. But otherwise, we are almost done. Okay, last sub-assembly before we can start adding some paint to this is the ball turret. Now obviously we're going to leave the glazing off. I need to do some masks for that yet, and then we'll be painting it as part of painting everything else separately and then building it on top. But we can build the lower frame, which is made up of these collective parts here. These have all been cleaned up and are ready to go, so it's a matter of assembly, which starts with these two frames and the seat. So I'm a little concerned about the way this goes together, because we're putting that into that lug there and then resting it on there. So I'm a little bit worried about spacing at the top. But we then have a frame that goes over the top of that. So we're going to have to act quickly, and I'll try and get this done on camera. Let's see how it gets on.